It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast of America, and live from the WACA studios, this is Good Night. In the news this week, President of UMass 5 Colleges, Marty Meehan, warns of an existential threat facing colleges in the next decade. In an address given to many other people who don't need to worry about tuition costs, Meehan cited that sharply declining birth rates between 2008 and today, combined with the fact that overall enrollment in higher education is declining, to blame for schools closing across Massachusetts. Among those closings reside Mount Ida and Newberry College. But is it true? Are we destined for a nation of uneducated youth in the future decades because millennials don't have enough kids? Maybe, but that's also not the whole story. Tuition prices have been rising to keep up with increased demand across the nation, especially when it comes to private schools. But in the case of UMass, Meehan and his administration, after a tuition hike at UMass universities, has been giving 5- and 6-figure bonuses in addition to an already 6-figure yearly salaries in 2018. We also have UMass's football coach who gets paid $500,000 in 2018, despite the team performing about as well as the New York Jets. So while the existential threat that Meehan decries may in fact exist, we guess that a little bit of money management in the administration would go a long way in stopping it. In the second most Australian thing you've heard today besides Crikey Mate, a new species of dinosaurs has been found down under, and it's about the size of a wallaby. The fossil is reportedly 125 million years old, and the new dinosaur named Galeosaurus is possibly evolutionary father to the wallaby and kangaroo. The researchers had to wade through their way through the snake pits and tarantula gardens in their quest to find the fossil at the end of the outback desert. Now that part is entirely untrue, but it's how it played out in my head, and there aren't any reports saying it didn't happen. In the first most Australian thing you've heard today, besides Crikey Mate, a viral video containing a man put in a perilous position down in Australia has people questioning its legitimacy. The video in question contains an Australian man who was untangling a wire beforehand and has suddenly found himself on the ground with the snake up his pant leg. He also had a clamp on his upper leg, claiming that it was holding the snake in place. Now, we can't play the audio for you because we'd get shut down, but as you can see, he makes the decision to rip the snake right out of his pants and run for it. Some are calling this video a hoax because it is too convenient, but the fact that it's a plausible thing that most people believed after seeing the video goes to show that either Australia is a death trap or we have absolutely know nothing about Australia. Personally, I'm going with the latter. Now, we try to avoid Trump news here on Good Night because, frankly, there's too much of it, and every late night show has something to say about it. But we like to make an exception every once in a while, and on Friday, Trump gave us an excuse. In a sit-down meeting with Tim Cook from Apple, Trump ended the meeting by introducing the Apple CEO as Tim Apple. Now, that is hilarious. It's like me introducing our guest tonight as Kirk Radio. But I might actually do that now that I think about it. But that's even funnier that Trump's Cheetos mistake is there when he denied he messed up on Friday, saying that he slipped Cook in there really quick. But today he tweeted he said Tim Apple in order to save time and words. Tim Apple changed his name on Twitter to reflect the newly bestowed name, and Trump Cheeto is currently doing damage control, hoping he doesn't mess up if Jeff Amazon or Bob Prostitution comes to the White House. In sports news, the Celtics have bounced back after a terrible stretch at home in late February, with 3 straight wins, most notably over the Lakers and the first-place Warriors. It's coming out now that what changed the team around was a toxic atmosphere, as Jaylen Brown called it, was the flight out west. The team reportedly vented their frustrations and came together over card games, specifically Uno. Now, if Kyrie Irving plays Uno like he plays basketball, I don't know if I want to catch a dagger draw 4, but it apparently worked for the C's. Defensive end Michael Bennett is being traded from the Eagles to the Patriots, as reported by many sports outlets today, as the trade comes after his brother Martellus Bennett recently retired from the Patriots. As usual, people are mad at the Patriots for this trade. Speculations report that Martellus may come out of retirement to play with his brother. The only problem is Martellus has been open on Twitter about his drug habits and would need to pass a drug test in order to play again. It's a difficult decision. Continue smoking pot or playing with your brother professionally. We'll keep you updated to see how this whole thing shakes out. New York is planning to build an observatory overlooking Manhattan, which in all honesty is the perfect way to experience New York, being able to see every inch of the city as far away as possible. Named The Edge, Hudson Yard's new outdoor observation deck will stand 11,000 square feet and open next year. This will make it the tallest outdoor observation deck in the Western Hemisphere, and now the 5th highest in the world, according to CNN. You have to ride an elevator for 60 seconds to get up there. It's like going to work in my company's elevator. It only takes 60 seconds because it's falling apart, not because it's getting a nice view at the top. No word on whether or not there will be binoculars at the top of the tower in order to see the Spider-Man impersonators demanding your change in Times Square. It will also be home to many upscale restaurants where you can throw up if you're afraid of heights. Central to the observation deck is a glass floor, because what's better than being 1,000 feet up and tricking your brain that there's no floor below you? If this appeals to any of you, group bookings are now available. And right before we go to the break and come back and talk all things Kirk Minihane, today is National Napping Day. We looked around the office to see what our staff celebrated, and today's national holiday, and here's a nice quick piece.
Yo, Todd, you finished that edit yet? Hey, Allison? Allison, is the set all right? John, come on. We're live in 5. Allison, get out of John's seat. Come on, guys, we got work to do.
Connor, we're live.
And live
Connor.
in the WHCA
Connor.
studios, this is Good Night.
Parasol, won't you let me see my friends? Won't you let me see them wherever they have the sun? Parasol, won't you help me understand? Won't you help me find out where the hell they want the sun?
Good evening and welcome back to Good Night. Now we're going to turn the topic and talk all things Kirk Minihane. And live from Philadelphia, John in Pennsylvania, more famously known on Twitter as Mark Hannonballs. John, we're forever connected now because you and I are deep into the Kirk Minihane story. So welcome to Good Night.
Hey, John, a long time no talk. I'm glad to be on, and thank you for having me. I can't thank you enough for this start. You're the one who really even gave me a voice initially. I might not be doing the podcast or anything that I'm doing now if it wasn't for the opportunity you gave me. So I wanted to thank you right off the bat.
Well, isn't that very nice, but not needed because it's all of your work on this story. Let's set the table a little bit for people who don't know, okay? Kirk
Sure.
Minihane, the most popular radio personality in the city of Boston, recently took WEEI to Marconi levels, and they won a Marconi in the last calendar year. A lot to do because of his doings on Kirk and Callahan on WEEI. And then Kirk, magically, is no longer on the air, but coming back on radio.com to do a podcast on a soon-to-be date. But if you look at Kirk's Twitter account, it's maybe it's soon, maybe it's not. So to talk a little bit about it, you've written a couple pieces that I posted on my website as well of why Kirk was being kept off the air. Give a Reader's Digest condensed version of what's going on with Kirk.
So to put a long story short, there's a lot of factors that you have to look at. The first is that when Kirk initially left the air, it was because a result of him having some mental health issues and suicidal thoughts. So initially, he did take a mental health absence to leave the air. Now, before that, he was oftentimes suspended for some remarks that he would make, maybe criticizing something like the Boston Globe or the Boston Red Sox, and that's something that we'll get into in a second. What happened was he was presented with, they told him in order to return, he'd have to provide a doctor's note. He got the doctor's note, said that he was ready to return. And lo and behold, this was during the World Series run by the Red Sox. WEEI told him, no, let's hold off until after the World Series. And then after that, they said, oh, let's hold off a couple more weeks. And finally, it came to a point where they said, you need to come, if you want to come back, you have to sign a gag order saying this is a whole list of things you're not going to be able to discuss. Kirk refused to sign it. As a result, he's now going to be doing a show at radio.com and a podcast and also a column that's going to be coming out shortly. But there's a lot of factors behind it that we can get into as far as the real reason why WEI didn't want him back.
Well, let's back up and rewind to about 3 years ago and how I got somehow intertwined with this story. As a local elected official in the town of Ashland, I had to support our health agent in town by the name of Mark Orem, who was also the health agent in Sherborne, because a gentleman by the name of Bob Murchison leveled a series of complaints with the IG's office in Massachusetts against Mark Orem, claiming that he was stealing time from the towns of Ashland and Sherborne. The state did a thorough investigation on Mark and came back and found that Mark was completely innocent, 100% innocent. The activist, better known as Bob Murchison, did not like that at all. Did not like it at all and was quite upset about all of that. Then you fast forward about 2 years, from that, and then all of a sudden, Jerry Callahan and Kirk Minihane say something on the air that Bob Murchison didn't like. And lo and behold, Murchison starts going after WEEI's advertisers. Do I have all that right?
Mm-hmm. You do. He was one of the factors. Essentially, Kirk and Jerry were discussing, I think it all started, or at least from an article by Tom Stackpole claims that this all started with a joke that Kirk and Jerry made regarding a television show. I believe it's called Transparent. And they made a joke about, one of the actors who was a trans person appearing, naked, and apparently he didn't. Kirk and Jerry made a joke about it, and the activist was listening that morning, did not like it, and basically made it his life's work over the next year and a half to wake up every day and, according to this article by Tom Stackpole, wake up every day and basically listen and listen for anything that he could find offensive that he could use as ammunition to email advertisers in order to get them to remove their sponsorship of the Kirk and Callahan show.
And quite successful at it. Quite successful.
Yes.
There are rumors going around that $1 million of ad revenue has been lost because of this work by the activists.
That's correct. I've heard at minimum $1 million, and I've heard that from a station sponsor. So I host the Minihane show along with one of my friends on Twitter. Drunk Eric Curtis also hosts the Minihane show with me, and we interviewed Scott Neary, who is a sponsor. He runs. He's a regional manager of Buffalo Wild Wings, and he said that at minimum $1 million in lost revenue, and this is coming out of the pockets of salespeople and coming out of the pockets of folks that are in the building at WEEI. Not so much the hosts, but it's the folks that are actually behind the scenes that are suffering from campaigns like this.
So you look at that, and I heard on your great podcast just this morning that maybe the Murchison piece is about 25% of the problem. The other issue is the Boston Globe took exception to something that Christian Fourier from WEEI had said on the air, and it has become a crusade of the Boston Globe. And you broke on my radio show, All Politics is Local, that there was a hit piece waiting in the weeds to come out the next time a WEEI host said something that Shirley Lung did not like, and you were 100% accurate because Shirley then released that piece. So let's talk about what Shirley doesn't like about WEEI.
So first of all, there's Shirley Long I believe she's currently the managing editor, the interim editor of the Boston Globe, and her essential conflict with Kirk started after Kirk and Callahan exposed Kevin Cullen for his basically plagiarism or false reporting surrounding the Boston Globe bombings, or I'm sorry, the Boston Marathon, the Boston Marathon bombings.
Right.
So they exposed it, and Kirk apparently had a phone conversation with Shirley, and she said something to the extent of, "Well, I'm going to get you for that." And the word that I got inside WEEI was that there was a hit piece that was going to be released as soon as there was another controversy that came about at the station, and like you said, it did ultimately come to fruition. Now, her reason for not liking Kirk, I think, started with the Kevin Cullen thing, but it's also a big part of it being she's connected, or at least according to Tom Stackpole, who again wrote a cover story, a profile on Kirk Minihane, said that Bob Murchison, the activist that you're discussing, John, has a friendship with Shirley Long, right? So and let's also tie into the fact that Kirk is oftentimes gone after the Boston Red Sox and criticized the Boston Globe under the management of Linda Pizzuti and the ownership of John Henry. So you've got John Henry that owns the Red Sox. Kirk has criticized the Red Sox. John Henry owns the Globe. Kirk has criticized the Globe. Shirley Long is the manager of the Globe. Bob Murchison is friends with Shirley. You've got these forces, all these collective group of forces that have basically come together and aligned against Kirk, ultimately resulting in him not coming back to the Kirk and Callahan show.
So let's talk a little bit about the Red Sox piece. A couple years ago, the Baltimore Orioles were in town, and Adam Jones, the center fielder for the Baltimore Orioles, claimed that he was called an inappropriate name by somebody sitting in the green monster seats. All Kirk Minihane did was to question it and said, in my opinion, a reasonable question, if it was said, somebody would be able to back up the story. That's all he was doing. He didn't say it didn't happen. He's just saying that nobody ever came forward and said, yeah, I was standing there, I heard the guy say it. So you've got 35,000 people at Fenway Park that night, and nobody heard it except for Adam Jones. That doesn't mean it didn't happen, but that's all Kirk did was question it and said it was odd, and I think it's a fair question. So the Red Sox took great exception to that, right?
Yeah, the Red Sox did not like that specifically. Sam Kennedy did not like that specifically. Sam Kennedy, his quote was saying that he was pressed on, well, how do you know? I think he was on Ordway, Merloni, and Fourier. I think it was when they pressed him, well, how do you know that what he heard was correct, that he actually heard what he says he heard? And Sam Kennedy's response was, well, I looked him in the eye and I believed him, right? And Kirk's response and Jerry's response was simply asking questions. And I think it comes to a larger point that in 2019, cancel culture and outrage culture that we're in, simply asking questions and asking for evidence beyond when it comes to a sensitive issue like this can be framed as hate speech and a fireable offense. It's a really scary time that we're in, where simply asking for proof, asking for evidence is something that could get you fired. And ultimately, that is where the beef started between the Red Sox, is that Kirk and Jerry said, listen, where's the proof? All we want to know is that this was shouted in the middle of the stands. You know, is everybody that's there, are they so racist that they're not going to confront this guy? They raised that question. There's no evidence of it. There's no recording of it. There's no other hearsay of people corroborating it. Again, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. But look at Jesse Smollett. Mm-hmm. Look at that. I mean, these things happen before. It just because somebody, you know, claims that something happens to them without due process and evidence, there's no way, shape, or form means that it actually did come to fruition. So they raised the question and they suffered for it.
Now, you mentioned Tom Stackpole's piece in the Boston Magazine. I invited Tom Stackpole to appear on this program. I know you've reached out to him to appear on your podcast. He's very polite with me and declined. But, you know, I read Stackpole's piece, having lived some of the realities of it, and I just shake my head and say, what has happened to journalism in America today?
Well, what's funny about that piece is that I don't really know. I mean, he's apparently one of the editors at Boston Magazine, so I don't know if he edited his own article or his own profile piece. He probably shouldn't have, because there's a lot of stuff in there that seems to me like obviously you have a primary source and you have secondary sources, right? On a profile, you would think your primary source is the subject, Kirk, right?
Correct.
This piece, there is so much information in there that's biased towards Bob Murchison. He actually interviews Murchison for it, and Murchison confirms in the Tom Stackpole piece that he is acquainted with Shirley Long. And there's a lot of things in there that paint Bob to be this sympathetic figure and a concerned father. And again, I don't know what's going on with this guy. Maybe he is at the beginning. Maybe that's where this started. But at the end of the day, it comes back to this decision of virtue-based business. A lot of businesses today are now engaged in virtue-based business. That's not so much focused on that they want to be virtuous as a business. It's the same old capitalism. They want to turn a profit, right? But they want to appear as what the kids would call woke, because right now, if you're woke, it can be profitable. Look at things like the new Captain Marvel movie, right? Or Black Panther, where they appear to be these woke icons, and they also are massively profitable. So it's not so much about morality, it's really about money. And I think that right now these activists realize that. You can look at someone like Tucker Carlson, where they realize that they'll say, well, listen, we're not infringing on free speech. We're using our free speech. They claim free speech and free market, but what they're doing is gaming the market, really is what they're doing. They're using them. They understand that these companies are so sensitive to these issues that if they get enough pushback, the companies are just going to say, you know what, we don't want to deal with it. This is not something that we want to even, get involved with. So we're done. We'll cut our losses. So they're really gaming the market and stifling free speech in the process.
Well, yeah, and that's what scares me is, as a person in the broadcasting, I like to talk to people I don't agree with. And and I think I'm in the minority now, because I love to challenge people I don't agree with. I love to have healthy debate. Maybe I can learn something. Maybe I can convert them over to my side. But nobody wants that anymore, especially in corporate media now. Everybody wants to be safe. Everybody doesn't want to disrupt anybody. Hey, and listen, I have no axe to grind against anybody in this thing. I have no axe against the activists. I have no axe against the Boston Globe. And the players on the field of the Boston Red Sox, how can you not love the team that's on the field of the Boston Red Sox? But what I do have a problem with is cutting it down to free speech. And if they can go after the most popular radio host in Boston, in a Marconi Award-winning post, they can go after you, they can go after me, and they can stifle free speech. And that's not what this country's all about anymore. It never.
Sure.
The morals of America are you have the right to your opinion, and if people don't like it, that's their problem. And that's not what we're getting on Boston radio or on Boston media anymore, and that's why I take great exception to this.
No, I agree, and I think that's where we are at right now, and it's kind of scary. There was a podcast that somebody brought to my attention today called, I think it's Sword and Scale podcast, that just got basically deplatformed by a similar Twitter campaign. Now, I researched into it and found that the host actually, in my opinion, did make some offensive remarks, But my view on it is I'll just not listen. I'll just change the channel. I just won't listen to that podcast. I won't follow that person on Twitter. I'm not going to make it my life's work to scour through every single tweet they've ever put out there to deplatform them. Or I'm not going to listen to every single word that they've ever put on there. Change the channel. I don't understand how we've lost that aspect of our society where we can just, if you don't like something, you don't have to watch it. You have the power as a consumer to change the channel.
Would Howard Stern be the king of all media if he was going under the scrutiny today? I like
No way.
I like Stern. Don Imus, Bubba the Love Sponge. Would any of them be, as relevant as today? I mean, look at, Tucker Carlson. They're going back 12 years on Tucker Carlson. There's things in my past and in everybody's past you said 12 years ago you wish you didn't say. So I'm so deeply disturbed by all of this. I mean, like you said, if I don't like what's on, I don't watch The Bachelor on ABC. If it's on, I do a U-turn in the family room and go the other way. That doesn't mean I'm going to work against getting it off the air, though.
No, I agree with you, and that's unfortunately where we're at right now. And there's good and bad to it. It's good to empower consumers and with social media to show people that they have a voice. It's also, I want to make it clear that I have nothing against the trans community or what what was happening with Bob's initial interest in this. If he wants to, if he's invested in this issue and it's a personal thing for him, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I disagree with the way that he went about it. I'm all for if you want to be trans, if you want to whatever you want to do, if that makes you happy. I understand that's a difficult thing for a lot of folks to go through. I'm very empathetic with that. I'm all for that. That's fine. This is not about the issue, and I think that that's my argument here. It's not so much about the issue itself of whether or not we're going to argue the morality of it. It's the practice and the ethics of how you go about silencing those you disagree with that I take issue with. We can have healthy discourse, which I think is what we're doing now, or we can try and silence and deplatform people, which has now become the common practice.
Let's talk a little bit about the Jimmy Fund. Unfortunately, there was a well-documented case here in the town of Ashland just recently. Jake Silver, young 18-year-old young man who just passed away from cancer, had a bucket list, and some of the things that he wanted to do was go to the Super Bowl and meet Tom Brady, and he went on Barstool Sports. Just a great story on so many different reasons, and a very emotional story. But Jake was a participant in the Jimmy Fund, and Lung and Murchison have been rumored to have worked actively against the WEEI Jimmy Fund telethon as a way to get back at Kirk and Jerry Callahan. You're going after kids with cancer. I mean, is there a worse thing? Is there a worse thing that you can do? If you're going to jeopardize the Jimmy Fund telethon just to settle a score, I mean, I don't think you get any lower than that.
No, and that's the thing is that Jerry and Kirk have done so much over the years with the Jimmy Fund to give back to kids that are suffering with cancer, and it's a great charity and it's a great fundraiser that they do at WEEI. I know that Kirk has said in the past that he wishes that he could still continue doing that, and unfortunately, it's not just so much that it's just a radio show that gives entertainment to people. When they do charity work like this, it's something that takes away from the money that they can give back to the Jimmy Fund. Now, thankfully, the Jimmy Fund they were able to come up with, due to an outpouring of listeners and folks that were called in. I think it's rumored that one of the hosts may have contributed something like $100,000 to it. I'm not sure if Kirk has kind of played coy over whether or not it was him. My view is that it probably was.
It was him. Anyway,
so they were able to overcome it. But you're right, and that's where the reality of these sort of campaigns is that you have to look at all the ramifications. Yes, you may be starting this out of you being concerned over a protected class or something offensive that somebody says, but in the reality, it doesn't negate the good that people are capable of doing either, even folks that we disagree with. And I think that's the problem for me, is that I'm all about let's have healthy discourse and healthy disagreements, and folks that we disagree with, let's talk it out. Let's have conflict instead of just saying, my worldview is so fragile that I can't tolerate or even engage or encounter folks with a differing opinion. I welcome it. I love disagreeing with people. To me, a boring radio show or a boring podcast is people getting together and agreeing. I want conflict, and I don't understand where
and so does the
now
audience.
Intellectually curious people don't want that.
The audience wants it as well, too, because why listen? So, Kirk Minihane's been removed from the air. John Featherston's been removed from the air. You think it stops there?
That's right.
You think it stops there, right? But it doesn't stop there.
No.
It doesn't stop there. Tell us what else is going on.
Yeah, so it does not stop there. And I think that's the point, is that ultimately, and again, if you mess up and you truly do mess up, I think folks should apologize and recognize it and move on. I'm also one for being, for being intellectually honest, right? If you mess up, own your mistake, be honest, don't obfuscate it and move past it, right? But if you have a genuine disagreement with somebody based on something that you may have a worldview difference on them with, that's fine. And right now, Kirk was deplatformed. And the activist is now continuing his campaign. In fact, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was sent an email from a station sponsor saying that, and it was something to the extent of going after Jerry Callahan. So even that the fact that Kirk was removed was not enough. Now the campaign continues to remove Jerry from the air. So now Jerry's on the air with Mike Mutnansky, and ultimately, my thing is that as somebody who's a listener and a fan of talk radio and a fan of even political commentators and just a fan of good entertainment, if you're going to continue to push that sort of practice of trying to pressure anybody with an edgy opinion or an opinion that you may find disagreeable, if you're going to push them out, what are we going to be left with? We're going to be left with a lot of really boring content, and I don't think anybody wants that.
There's two people left on Boston radio who talk about Donald Trump in the positive. Howie Carr, Jerry Callahan. Is this political? Is this political? I mean, or what is the agenda here? Is this just to get, because Jerry is a proud conservative? Is that what this is?
I don't know if it's so much that because again, you have to remember that this started initially with a joke that both Jerry and Kirk said, and it also comes back to, and I think this is where the activist initially was sending out sound, is that he unearthed, and you can look it up. You can see him on message boards, asking for archived audio of old Dennis and Callahan shows, where he was sending around email clips of audio clips of a Dennis and Callahan show of them talking about a 4-year-old and parents of a 4-year-old that was transitioning from male to female, whether or not hormone replacement therapy was appropriate for a 4-year-old, testosterone blockers essentially to block any of that from happening. Now, you can call it what you want. We can discuss that issue all day long, but you can't tell me that saying that they're taking issue with it or questioning the ethics of giving a 4-year-old hormone replacement therapy, you can't tell me that that's hate speech. It's not. That's a valid argument. Now, Jerry may have said, I think Jerry called the parents crazy. And I think that's where the activist took issue with it. Okay. I think Jerry was being hyperbolic. I think he was being polemical, was using an extreme argument to make his case. But I don't think that that's grounds to remove him from the air, to deplatform the guy. I think at the end of the day, the topic they're discussing is open for debate.
Yeah, it's open for debate, and I think most people that you would poll in any room would probably say, yeah, a 4-year-old can't decide what they're going to have for breakfast today, much less, changing their gender. I don't think it's an unreasonable. Either side of the argument, I think that you're on. I don't think it. So he's still going after Jerry, and like you said, Jerry. Is there anybody in Boston who's done more for kids with cancer than Jerry Callahan? I mean, he's a cancer survivor
done so
himself.
much.
He's done so much. And it just goes back to what you said before. If you don't like what they're saying, turn it off. Turn something else on. So how do we get ahead of this going forward? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think ultimately a lot of things are moving more towards independent platforms. I know myself and my podcast partner on the Minihane show right now, we're going to be possibly selling merchandise ourselves in order to be able to pay for our expenses. And a lot of folks are moving towards Patreon, which is a sponsor. Where folks actually pay a sponsorship directly to the content provider. I think a lot of places are moving towards more towards an independent platform, because a lot of this advertising-based content, if you can get in the ear of the advertisers, you essentially have the power to deplatform and control the content. So I think that's one thing. I think also moving towards new media. Right now, social media has enabled everybody to have a real voice. You look at this, we're on YouTube right now. This wasn't possible 10 years ago. Right. So I think with these new forms of media, folks are looking for, free speech and all these topics and these discussions will still find a way to get out there. I just think it's not going to look the same as it did maybe 10, 15 years ago with the advertising-based model.
But I'm excited about that, because this morning I get a pop-up on my phone that your new podcast dropped at 6 a.m., the Minihane Show. Mm-hmm. It drops at 6 a.m. I get in my car about 6:30, plug in my iPhone to my car, and for the next hour and 20 minutes, I listen to your podcast today. Don't listen to terrestrial radio, which I typically do listen to terrestrial radio because I still do like to listen to news and sports in the morning. But this morning, I was listening to your podcast, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. There were no ads, there were no breaks. It was great conversation. There was healthy debate, some fresh language. It was great, and it's a new way to experience media that I don't think that the hierarchies that are running radio stations, especially with the way everything's gone national, that people, they better wake up, or they're going to find out that the ratings aren't going to even go down more.
Yeah, the example I always bring up is Barstool, and obviously Barstool Sports, love them or hate them. We're not talking about that. We're talking specifically as a business model and a revenue model. They're completely started out as independent. They won't listen to whatever their advertisers say. They're totally based on putting out the best, the content that their audience finds funny. And that's something that's powerful. I think that they're probably the first to do it really on such a grand scale. And I think you're going to see a lot more media outlets and content providers going towards that model where it's not so much the traditional model. But now, Barstool just passed ESPN on their radio, on podcasting. So they're bigger than ESPN in terms of their radio and podcast network. I think they're number 3 for podcast networks. So that I think is the way of the future. I think it's breaking down those old ways of doing media.
Well, to think where Barstool started and to where they are now, it's unbelievable, that rise. If they're beating ESPN, that should be a message to ESPN as well too. So let's talk about the Minihane Show. Let's talk a little bit about how do people learn more about it.
Sure, yeah. So the Minihane Show, we're on Stitcher, we're on Apple Podcasts. We're essentially a super fan roundtable between myself and another parody account or another Twitter user named Drunk Eric Curtis on there. He can give his real name if he wants to at some point later in the future. But he's an old school radio guy. He had a career in radio at one time, and now he's making a little bit of a comeback with the Minihane Show. I'm in there as kind of the two chair. I provide commentary, and we bring in a guest. We've had on folks that are close to the station. We've had on station sponsors. We just had on Paul Chartier, who used to be a producer for Kirk and Callahan. And we're basically just talk all things in the world of Kirk. Kirk's show has not started yet. It's yet to start. It will start in the near future. We should be getting more information on that as the days and weeks go by. But it will start this year. But in the interim, we're trying to provide anything. If Kirk does a podcast or if there's behind the scenes stuff we can explore, we try and provide that view. And we also a lot of our stuff is how would Kirk do a show, or how would Kirk do a podcast if he had freedom to do it and it was on a smaller scale? And that's kind of what we do. We kind of embrace that same sort of philosophy and who we pick as guests and how we structure our show. We have callers that used to be callers on Kirk and Callahan come in and do appearances with us. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of banter. It's a lot of craziness. And it's ultimately, it's a good time. We do about once a week. So it's the Minihane Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Minihane Show and also on Apple Podcasts, on Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's on Blind Mike's podcast network. Let's talk a little bit.
That's right. Yeah. So we just joined the Blind Side Network, which is by Blind Mike, who used to be a host and podcaster over at WEEI, and was essentially, in my opinion, was let go from there for standing up for Kirk. Yep. What it was told to him was that he needed to show more loyalty for the station and for the program director, and less loyalty for Kirk Minihane. So there's a kind of a theme here. We talk about folks that are standing up for this guy end up getting deplatformed and losing their position. I know that you could talk a little bit about that, John.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about that because, Joey Zarbano from EEI reached out to me over the summer and then actually invited me in, and we taped a podcast with Kirk that was pulled because the activists found out that I got inside the station. And I still find that to be the most fascinating part, is who inside Intercom said John Featherston taped a podcast with Kirk Minihane. How did that get out, and how did the activists find out about it? And it was pulled because Murchison then did a public records request on all of my emails, which is fascinating. But Zarbano was very, very, and I want to stress the word very, supportive of Kirk at that time. I don't know how it all ended. I hear rumors about that it didn't end well. But, Zarbano's a young man. I have nothing but, accolades for him. I thought he handled the situation well. He was certainly a gentleman with me and handled it with class. I see him get beat up constantly on Twitter. And like I said, I don't know how the final days all ended up. But, I look at it, the program director getting beat up over supporting his talent because corporate mandated him. And that kind of scares me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the other thing we have to consider is that David Field, and this has been confirmed to me by two separate sources, one of them being Paul Chartier, that David Field and Sam Kennedy are friends, right? And as we know, David Field is the CEO of Entercom. Entercom is the parent company of WEEI. Sam Kennedy, obviously, is part of the front office and the management group of the Boston Red Sox. Sam Kennedy and Kirk do not get along. So you've got somebody in the CEO of Entercom's ear basically saying, hey, listen, this guy – He's coming at us with Adam Jones. He's coming at John Henry. He's coming at Linda Pizzuti. And, when you have somebody like that, basically being the advisor, speaking to the CEO of Entercom, I think that's going to be a lot more to blame, David Field and the Sam Kennedy thing, than it is for Joey Zarbano. Whether or not you love him or hate him, I think ultimately when we talk about blame pie, he may have some part of it, but ultimately it's not really his call. You've got Mark Hannon, who's the I guess the content, the vice president of content over there.
Who you've made famous.
And then you've got David Field. I think those are the guys that really have made the calls as far as Kirk leaving or staying. But Kirk is, we talked about independent platforms. He's going to radio.com, which right now it's online radio, but it's through an app, and it's really something that he can develop on his own, that he can kind of bring it into its own form, where he can take that from the ground up and build something from there. So he's even following that mold of going the more independent route.
All right, we only got a minute left, but I can't let you get away. Let's talk a couple about some of the EEI hosts. You and Mark James. There seems to be a disagreement there.
Oh, geez. Okay, so Mark James and I have been going at it since I called in. I think I was driving up to my folks live up in Boston, in Massachusetts. So I drive up there every once in a while. So when I drive up there, usually on a weekend, I might hear James on the radio. So I'll call in just to mess with the guy. And we got into a lot of disagreements. He does not like me, to the point that now if there's a caller that calls in, just their name being John, and they disagree with him, he thinks that it's me, and he'll call me out and he'll say, so yeah, he and I don't necessarily get along. I think it's more so I'm trying to get him on the podcast right now, so I'm trying to play nice with him, but hopefully we'll get him on the podcast in the future. But right now, he and I don't necessarily get along just because we have a little bit of a difference of opinion.
So 2 master's degrees does not mean necessarily that you're smart then, I guess, right, Mark James?
No, not necessarily. Just because he has 2 master's degrees doesn't mean that he's necessarily that smart.
Painful radio, painful radio. Hey, real quick, let's talk about the midday host and his ridiculous comments about Kirk. We only got about 30 seconds, but real quick.
Oh, geez. So Blind Mike, who is the founder of Blindside Pods, the podcast network that we're on, had Rich Keefe on his podcast, Trash Talk. You guys should look it up. It's episode 9 of Trash Talk. And he essentially took Keefe to task. And Keefe basically said that he disputed whether or not Kirk and Callahan were #1 in the ratings. He basically underplayed the whole activist connection. There was a lot of stuff there. So you guys definitely look up Blind Mike's Trash Talk is what it's called on iTunes, and listen to episode 9. It's really fascinating to hear somebody's perspective inside WEI who completely is in denial about really what happened.
Hey, John in Pennsylvania, more famously known on the Twitter as Mark Hannon's Balls. So we can't thank you enough for joining us here on Good Night. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. I'm sure this story is far from over. But
It's been a pleasure, John.
It's always
It's
a
been
pleasure.
a pleasure. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Thank you again.
All right, guys, we're going to throw it. We're going to throw it to a quick break, and you're going to watch a video from the 3 OGs. We're right here on Good Night.
I can see why you think you belong with me. Never tried to make you think, let you see one thing for yourself. Now you're off with someone else and I'm alone. See, I thought that I might keep you for my own. Amy, what you want to do? I think that I could stay with you for a while, maybe longer if I do. Don't you think the time is right for us to find all the things you thought weren't proper could be right in time? And can you see which way we should turn together all alone? See, I thought that I might keep you for my home. Baby, what you want to do? I think that I could stay with you for a while, maybe longer if I do. Now it's come to what you want, you've had your way, and all the things you thought before just faded in gray. And can you see that I don't know if it's you or if it's me? If it's one of us, I'm sure we both will see. Won't you look at me and tell me, baby, what you want to do? I think that I could stay with you for a while, maybe longer if I do. What you want to do? I think that I could stay with you for a while, maybe longer if I do. Yeah, now, baby, what you want to do? I think that I could stay with you for a while, maybe longer if I do. 'Cause I keep falling in and out of love with you, falling in and out of love with you. Don't know what I'm gonna do. I keep falling in and out of love with you. Trailers for sale around, rooms 11.50 cents. No phone, no pool, no pets. Ain't got no cigarettes. I smoke for stogies that I have found. Short but not too big around, 'cause I'm man of means by no means. King of the road, third boxcar, midnight train, destination Bangor, Maine. Those old worn out servant shoes don't pay no union dues. I've 2 hours of pushing a broom. Buys a 8x12 4-bedroom, 'cause I'm man of means by no means. King of the road. know every engineer on every train, all of the children, all of their names, and every handout in every town, every lock that ain't locked and no one's around. You see trailers for sale around, rooms left 50 cents, no phone, no pool, no pets. Ain't got no cigarettes I smoke, or stogies that I have found. Sure, not too big around, 'cause I'm man of means by no means, king of the road, king of the road, king of the road. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. There's only darkness every day. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. She's always gone too long. Anytime she's gone away. Anytime she's gone away. I wonder this time where she's gone. Wonder if she's gonna stay. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. This house just ain't no home. Anytime she's gone away. Where she's gone. I wonder if she's gonna stay. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away. Anytime she goes away. Baby, last night was hands down one of the best nights, had no doubt. Between the bottle of wine and the look in your eyes and the modern gay, we danced in the dark under September stars in the pouring rain. And I know that I can't ever tell you enough. All I need in this life is your crazy love. If I never get to see the northern lights, if I never get to see the Eiffel Tower at night, oh, if all I've got is your hand in my hand, baby, I could die happy now. red dress brings me to my knees. Oh, but that black dress makes it hard to breathe. It's ain't so broad, it's so cute, it's the hardest masterpiece. It's too good to be true, there's nothing better than you, my wildest dreams. And I know that I can't ever tell you enough. All I need in this life is your crazy love. If I never get to see the northern lights, if I never get to see the Eiffel Tower at night, oh, if all I've got is your hand in my hand, maybe I could die happy. Don't need no vacation, no fancy destination. Baby, you're my great escape. We can stay at home, listen to the radio, dance around the fireplace. If we never get to build my mansion in Georgia, we'll drive a sports car up the coast of California. Oh, if all I've got is your hand in my hand, maybe I could die happy man. I could die happy man. People get ready, there's a train a-comin'. You don't need no baggage, just get on board. All you need is some faith to hear the diesels humming. You don't need no ticket, just thank the Lord.
And we're back here on Good Night. We've got a special guest joining us here for this segment, Joe White. Joe, thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here. You got something big going on in the town of Ashland.
Thank you so much for having me here. Yes, we do. It's our Ashland Community Theater has our show coming up in April. It's our 11th show. We're in our 6th year.
It's hard to believe. Wow.
That's amazing. It felt like just yesterday we started it, but it's called the Victorian House Catering Company, and it's all original material written by local writers about the Victorian House Catering Company, ranging from 1899 all the way to 2049, over 150 years of parties.
All in one performance.
All in one performance.
So a long night, folks. No.
Oh, well, it starts on it starts April 11th and it ends on the 13th. So it's a 3-night event. No, it's about an hour and 40 minutes of the show, 15-minute intermission, and we're going to be at the Ashland VFW Theater.
Let's talk about the Ashland
Yep.
Community Theater because,
Sure.
like you said, you're in your 6th year
Yep.
of doing it. A lot of great things going on.
Yep.
You were one of the masterminds behind
Yep.
it. Let's talk about your team a little bit.
Yep. So we have really good people on our team. Rich Reeves is our set director, technical director, lighting person. Katrina Layberger, Ashland resident, is our stage manager. We've got around 5 or 6 core writers. We have Heidi Hansen, an Ashland resident, who is our marketing and promotion person. We've got a great affiliation with Barbara Chisholm here at WACA. We have our show Behind the Curtain. Now we're going to be the 2nd highest rated show in WACA now, because you're going to take over #1. So we'll
Let's
be
hope
number
so.
2. We'll see that. We've got a great relationship with the Marconi's company in Ashland at the VFW. Very supportive. And we've got great sponsors, and Nadine Nesbitt, who works in the WAIT program, helps us out from promotion, advertising, and getting sponsors to do what we do.
Wouldn't you love to have half the amount of energy that Nadine has?
Oh, yeah, I would love that. I go to sleep every night thinking I should.
So it really is a group and a community effort. I mean, some great people involved with
Yep.
it. How can people learn more about it?
Well, they can go to our website, ashlandcommunitytheater.com, or they can email us at ashlandcommunitytheater@gmail.com and reach out to us and let us know what you're interested in. Not everybody has to be on the stage. We have a lot of people who help out in behind the scenes with the stage management, tech crew, and we need help house managing. Last couple of shows, we had over 110, 120 people at the show.
Wow,
So
great.
we have to have people bring out the seats so people can sit in and get involved. It's a good community. It's a good opportunity to meet a bunch of people. It's not overly taxing as far as time is concerned. It's maybe during a show period, it's maybe twice a week if you're in all the scenes. But if you're in the tech week, it's just the week that we're doing tech, which is the week of the show leading up to the 13th.
So if you want to be behind the scenes, costumes, stage management,
Yep.
sound and lighting,
Yep.
you're always looking for that type of help.
Absolutely. I'm looking for people to do hairdressing, makeup, sound, lighting, all that kind of stuff. That we need hands and we need bodies, because we can't rely on the same people to do it every single show.
Right.
Because the commitment, it's a lot of commitment to do a show.
So let's talk about the genesis of the new show.
Yep.
What got you thinking about this?
Well, one of the things we differentiate ourselves a little bit from other community theaters is we do a lot of original material. But what we like to do when we do original material, we like to do it in a theme or a set, so we don't have to change the set like if we do 10-minute scenes, we don't want to change the set 7 different times. So we tried to think of a concept. So one of the things I came up with was a Victorian House Catering Company, which was a catering company in where I grew up in Glendale, Queens.
Oh.
And it was people used to have their parties there, so that was a big thing. If you're going to have your communion party or your confirmation or your graduation, or you have to go there for a wake, the Victorian House was the place to go. And so it always stuck in the back of my mind. And when I got the group together to start kicking around ideas, we started to talk about, what different kind of parties would we have? Then we started to talk more about, well, I'd like to do something different, and about maybe I'd do something in the 1920s. Then we had the brainstorm of why don't we just do an arc of the show, starting when this originated in 1899, all the way through. Let's not stop in 2019. Let's go to 2049 and think of ideas about how parties would be in that time frame. So it starts off with a documentarian who is going to kind of do a historical perspective on the show. And it enabled a lot of different people to come up with different ideas. Like I said, there's 10 different writers. doing this, and which is really, really cool.
Well, the good news is we're going to make it to 2049 using
Yep.
Yeah, so that's great. So how can people get tickets? How can people learn more about it?
Once again, they go right to our website, Ashland Community Theater, and on the website right up front it tells us about the dates of the show. It's going to be April 11th, 12th, and 13th at the Ashland VFW. It's at 7:30. Our tickets are very, very reasonably priced. It's $12 online. If you look at any other community theaters around the town, they're in the mid-20s to get there. We try to keep our prices low because we want more people to come out and see it. And it doesn't necessarily mean paying more is going to be a better performance. You're going to get a great performance regardless of if you pay $12 or not. We absorb the fees ourselves because I hate those little $12 charges, and then next thing you know, it's $14.72. But they can go online, ashlandcommunitytheater.com. Tickets go on sale 5, 4, 3, 2, now.
Now.
Go.
So get your tickets.
Yeah.
He's Joe White of the Ashland Community Theater Group. You've got to go out to the show. Check the dates, April 11th, 12th, and 13th, 7:30 p.m. at the Ashland VFW. And go out and support community theater. Joe, it's a pleasure to have you here on Good Night.
John, thank you very much. Good luck with this show. It's really good. I've been watching it since the beginning.
I
and
appreciate that.
I'll keep watching.
We want to thank the 3 OGs, the Velvet Ants, Kirk Minihane, and John in Pennsylvania. You've been watching Good Night. We'll be back Thursday live on YouTube. Join us then. And everybody, good night.